1, camera 2, camera 3, and then I can see myself, which is always horrifying. And hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Nerdrotic podcast. As you can see, I'm all by my lonesome, just me and a hot cup of Joe, ready to start talking a little Westworld. And I even have notes for this one. No cool ones with little pictures on it. And God, I hope I can read my writing here. But HBO just aired the 8th episode of Westworld, which was called Trace Decay. Which really I'm still trying to figure out what that title has to do with what is going on, other than the general condition of life and how horrible people are in the show. This is such an HBO series, isn't it? Like, everybody's kind of fucked up in their own way, even the robots, which is pretty sad. So I'm gonna take a little sip of coffee. I'm gonna wait a couple seconds for a couple people to join in here. Hello, Emo. Hey, what's up? Adrian is watching. Yo, Adrian. Sorry, I had to do that, buddy. I used to work with Adrian down at Chrysler, and he's working for Tesla now, I think. Are you still working for Tesla, Adrian? Okay. So these solo podcasts are always fun. I've always been good at talking with myself, I guess. We won't make any other jokes there, shall we? So let's rock and roll. This won't be a long one because I can only talk to myself or to you guys, but please pipe in with any questions. I will respond immediately on Facebook or on Periscope, which is on our Twitter. Our Twitter is at Nerdrotics. Our website is www.nerdrotic.com, and our Facebook is facebook.com/nerdroticpodcast. And let's get going. So this episode begins right where the last one left off. We have Bernard getting powered up again after he killed Teresa. And it's all still there, and all these memories are still there with him, and he does his little freak out. And Dr. Ford monologues quite a bit in this episode, actually. I was wondering what you guys are thinking about, his monologuing. It's been kind of a little too much for me, but I mean, that's one minor flaw in what is turning out to be just such a great show. But after last week's episode, I was absolutely convinced, and by the way, spoilers, I assume since you're watching me, you watched the show, and I don't know if you guys go online. I try not to go online and read too many other theories because I like to come up with them on my own, no matter how wrong they usually are. But I could not resist upon my third viewing of last week's episode, Trompe l'Oeil. Is that how you say it? My French is horrible. Sorry. I was maybe digging too deep, but after last episode, I thought we were dealing with not one, not two, but 3 different timelines, because I definitely think we're out of time, and I still think on one we're out of time, but I'll get into that. I became convinced Bernard is a remake of Arnold, which I still think so. And then the big one that's out there, plug your ears. I'm giving you till the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The big one out there is that William is the Man in Black, which I thought, that could make a lot of sense. And Dennis and I talked about it last podcast, and I think, oops, I forgot to hit that camera. I think that one's wrong. And Dennis and I went into the whole, like, his mole is gone, or the eye color doesn't look right to me. Does Ed Harris? It seems to me that he's got like hazel eyes. And Emo Gonzalez, who the great artist and good friend of mine, is watching now. And we are both like humongous Blade Runner fans, and we love to find our Blade Runner connections, and Emo is the best at it. Emo says another connection to Blade Runner: Anthony Hopkins' character is named Ford. See more. I gotta see more. Hang on. Harrison Ford plays Deckard in Blade Runner and is finally classified in the tabloids by Ridley Scott as a replicant. Therefore, Ford might be an advanced robot in Westworld. And I agree with you on that theory. And Dennis and I kind of expanded on it a little bit. We thought it was shot down, but not necessarily, especially after his monologue in the beginning of the show. He's talking to Bernard, and he switches off his emotions, but he still makes him aware of what happened. And he tells Bernard, you're in this unique space to where you know what you are and you know what you did. How does that make you feel? And Bernard says, I know I have these feelings. I just don't know what they mean. And then he asks, well, what really makes you different from me? And Ford essentially says nothing. Nothing makes us different. Ford obviously is just hardcore scientist and doesn't believe that the human consciousness or the human condition is anything special. It's just like he said last episode with the peacock feathers, like everything we do is essentially a mating ritual. It's an exacerbation of our basic instincts, like the Empire State Building, the Golden Gate Bridge, inventing the internet, is just trying to get laid, basically. And I totally agree with that, by the way, in real life. It was the basis of everything I've ever done. And there's something to that, and I love how they're getting into that in this show. It's super deep, man. So it throws it out there that there really is no difference between them and us, and that still throws, you could throw in, that opens this show up to so much more. And I've been saying it every episode, and I'll say it again, this show's going to turn us upside down 6 ways to Sunday on Sunday night. And I mean, I certainly hope they don't go the Matrix route, like this is all a digital simulation. That would be kind of a cop out, or it's purgatory. Please don't be purgatory, because J.J. Abrams is involved. But I love the fact that I always want to say Thor. Ford is an advanced robot, and I'm really interested to see like where we are time wise, like what century it is. Are they 1,000 years in the future? Are they? To me, it seems at least a couple hundred. We're getting close to Star Trek territory here. Maybe it's a big holodeck. I don't know. But what that said, and that might be the Trace Decay. What that scene set up was this entire episode where, and it's amazing. It's almost like the writers knew how the fans were going to react theory wise, and they probably do. And they just decided that, kind of mix up and mess up all of our theories. So I mean, I walk away from this episode not thinking William is the Man in Black. I still think Bernard is Arnold, and I can't remember it now, but somebody rearranged the letters for Bernard Lowe, and it does make the name Arnold. I forgot the last name, but it does make the name Arnold. So that, I mean, that's almost too obvious. That's such a dirty trick, doing the mix, changing the letters around to make somebody's name. But I think Ford would be more creative than that, don't you? I don't know. So he makes Bernard go all CSI on himself and clean up everything, and that's such an advantage to these things. You can program them, hey, get rid of everything and don't miss any detail, and they won't. But as a typical machine, I think the big thing here, and I think this is why Ford is so convinced these things can't become alive, is because of these fail safes, and it is essentially a machine. And no matter how smart a computer is, a machine is, it's only as good as what we tell it to do. Now Maeve throws a monkey wrench in that, and we'll get into that in a bit. So Arnold, before he gets his I said Arnold, Bernard, before he gets his emotions in a wreck, he kind of throws the chair and says, "I'll stop you," and that's when Ford kind of shuts him down. And he mentions something very interesting, that Arnold tried to stop him too. And I guess it's pretty obvious that Ford killed Arnold at this point. But Ford is a murderous bastard, by the way. And I'm wondering if he's just starting to lose it now, and starting to get sloppy, because we find out there's a couple more deaths, or if he just has a big body count over the last 35 years. That'll be very interesting. Let me get this sip of coffee in. It is late. Sorry, by the way, I got this one off late. I have a son throwing up. He had his friend over. Maybe they ate too much junk food, but this looks kind of like the flu to me. So hopefully, if my boss is watching, hopefully I don't get the flu, but I feel fine right now. Yeah, but the poor kid is actually, I'm going to run and crack my door real quick because I'm supposed to be keeping an ear out for him. I won't be too loud. Okay, I'm back. All right, so there was a lot of jumping around this episode. We kind of went around the horn. And there's also another little scene when Bernard is cleaning up the mess and he's getting all the evidence of him and Teresa's relationship. He goes to an incinerator. Didn't you get the feeling that incinerator is going to come into play at some point in time? Yeah, I did too. And then we get to Maeve, and we start out in the Sweetwater, and we hear "House of the Rising Sun" on the and there's two great songs they did, and I'll tell you the other one later, on the player piano. And that's getting kind of fun, guessing the song on the player piano. So I'll just tell you, we had, House of the Rising Sun by the Animals, and we had some Amy Winehouse, which is awesome. Love Amy Winehouse. Saw her at Coachella. She was amazing. I was like 5 feet away from her, and she looked like she weighed 90 pounds. So Maeve and Felix and Sylvester, I finally remembered his name. Sylvester are continuing her upgrades, and she's just getting more and more. And this is the part of the story I'm having a little trouble with, and maybe they'll explain this one later, but she is getting away with a lot, and they know when their hosts are misbehaving. I mean, it flags automatically, so they have to know. So I'm thinking this is still kind of a ruse. Maybe by Dr. Ford, maybe by somebody else, maybe by the board. I don't know. The board doesn't seem that smart, though. And here we see Emo Gonzalez says, Arnold was built by Ford and became conscious of right and wrong and turned on Ford. So you think Arnold was always... Well, I mean, he did mention that. You're right. He mentioned that... we just talked about this in a private message, Emo. Like, you can't make another one of yourself when you got to create a vision and you're trying to, like, I don't know, do a comic store, or do a salon, or write and draw a comic. You do want to collaborate. It's fun. It's fun to collaborate. Plus, you can always use some help. But damn it, you just can't put. People just won't do what you tell them to do. Exactly. And it's frustrating. And and we understand, and that's why it's just best to sometimes go on it alone. When it's when it's something that's dear to you, go it alone. I'm just at least start it alone, get it established, make all the rules, and then bring other people in. But if you want, but just make sure they do what you tell them to do. Make sure they're on board and they're loyal. So enough lecturing there from Gary. We also have William, and let's stick with Maeve. I'm going to go backtrack to Maeve real quick. We get a lot of information this episode, and I definitely think there is two different timelines here, but it looks like we'll start with Maeve. With Maeve's timeline, it must have been recent where she started being the madam at the Sweetwater, because we see her interacting with the Man in Black, and he doesn't look any younger. And I think they did mention that she had only been at it for a year or so, maybe. So the events of what led up to, and then it was mentioned by Ed Harris, the events that led him on his little side mission happened a year ago. So what I'm wondering is, Maeve started blinking out when she was told these violent ends have violent whatever the catchword was, or the safe word or the unsafe word to make them, you know, kind of open their eyes. And it was Dolores who told her, but it's Maeve who's come the longest way. And yes, I know that's kind of how she was programmed. She was programmed to be able to read people. But I mean, this is off the charts what she's doing, and it's pretty extraordinary. And we find out why this episode. Ed Harris character, the Man in Black, recently lost his wife, and he tells you he's a captain of industry, and he had a foundation. He's a philanthropist. He's kind of a Donald Trump tech, who knows what he is, but a powerful man, a powerful jaded man. And as with all powerful men, anybody who becomes a billionaire is ruthless. And this way, he's able to go somewhere and kind of be who he really is, you know. And this goes along the theory of when a person's finally, I don't know, exposed, caught, you know, when you can drop all pretense. A great example is, I would imagine, if you're in prison. If you're in prison, you don't need any walls, any pretense. You're already caught. You're a number. You're in the system. And in a lot of ways, you're in this cage. You can't go where you want. You can't interact with who you want, but you can be who you want. And a lot of times that's not a good thing. Like I said, all pretense is dropped. And essentially, you're personally free in there because you don't have to pretend to like people. You don't have to go through those little white lies of life. And that's kind of what Westworld is. Westworld, you can go and be free and be the murderous, you know, child killing, raping bastard you want to be. And you know, it kind of shows you this thin line that we're all on morally. And yeah, what a dangerous idea Westworld would actually be. So Ed Harris, the Man in Black's character, decides he wants to do, you know, kill a kid for kicks to see if it makes him feel. He's trying to cut himself to make him feel. Cue Johnny Cash at this point. So he gets to Maeve and her daughter, and he stabs Maeve in the stomach, then kills her daughter in front of her. And then, you know, he said he felt nothing, but what tripped him out was Maeve didn't die. And Maeve continued living and picked up her daughter and ran out of the house. And when she fell down, I don't know if this was in his head, I don't know if it's in her head, or if there was an actual pattern on the ground. She fell down in the middle of the maze. And, you know, I think it's way more than the literal sense that we're seeing there. You know, I don't know what it is. I'm open to theories. But and we've got Emo with another one. Maybe there are loyalists. We're going back to Arnold here. Maybe there are loyalists to Arnold who are aware that something happened to him and will start to challenge Ford, i.e., the new female director and the Asian engineer who's upgrading Maeve. Evie is we find out Evie is dead. I'll get into that in a second. So after she watches her daughter die, Maeve watches her daughter die and goes into the Maeve. Right before she dies, she experiences what the Man in Black perceives as a spark of life, like real life. She becomes real at that point. So that spark is there. So I think, like Melissa and I talked about in earlier podcasts, we're getting our artificial intelligence, but we're getting it from multiple angles. Like there's the Arnold, and I think Maeve, in a lot of ways, is coming to it on her own. And it goes back to how Ed Harris figured out, you know, that's why he killed the wife in front of Lawrence back in the town a few episodes back, because he figured out, like, when they're at their greatest pain, people are the most real, which is true. And that's when he got Lawrence's daughter to talk about the maze. What is the maze? I have no clue what the maze is. I think the maze might be a way. I think the maze is something developed by Arnold, actually. I don't know if I've heard Dr. Ford mention it, and it's a way to get to Arnold, or it's a way to get to artificial intelligence to get that spark of life, or it's a way to escape, or it's a way to draw in the host to kill him. I don't know. That was pretty interesting. Let's get okay. Now, we also had, Dr. Ford also had Bernard wipe his memory of any relationship with Teresa, which seems very sloppy because you do have a security guard there who looks like, I wasn't sure really what side he's on, but he definitely looks like he's on the board side. And I still don't know his name, so I'm just going to call him Thor's little brother. I think he is. I still think he's a host, but he caught on to Bernard pretty easily because he went up and mentioned that they had their differences in the past, but he mentioned that he knew about Teresa's relationship, and Bernard was just completely cold about it and said, I barely even knew her. Now, you could take that a couple different ways, like, maybe it was just a sex relationship, but he definitely thought something was up with there. So he's either a host, he's really onto something. And if he is, then he's a dead man. He'll be dead within an episode. I should have put him on my death pool. We also have Teddy and the Man in Black go off to find Wyatt, and they find one of these big, I don't know, whatever creatures they are. And these things can't be shot or killed unless I guess they're decapitated. But in the scuffle, Teddy sees the Man in Black dragging off one of these weird beastie things, and he flashes the memory of him dragging Dolores into the barn to rape or kill her or take her scalp or do whatever he does. So Teddy is starting to remember, and Teddy has not been told the magic words to open his mind, so he's gotten there on his own, and that's interesting as well. And it might be because the guy has just died so many damn times. He is the Kenny of Westworld, so he knocks Ed Harris out because he figures out, and they find a girl, and they find a group of people who've been killed, and one girl's alive, and it was the girl who brought William through on his orientation. And it turns out that, she was a setup. When Teddy was talking to Ed Harris after he came to, we get some background on Ed Harris, and that's when he mentions he's a god, he's a titan of industry, and why he came to Westworld and why he's doing the things he does and get to the maze. Like, he left his life behind. He's basically on, I don't know, on a suicide mission. Maybe he's looking for some kind of meeting before he checks out and dies, or he wants to become something greater. Or maybe he wants to become a host. Maybe that's the life he envies. Maybe these hosts he's been tearing up, like Ford actually mentioned in the episode that they live a much more blissful life because they're free of guilt and doubt. And maybe he wants to become a host. The Man in Black in the original movie is a host. I've had a lot of theories about him, but I think Ed Harris becomes the Yul Brynner, a much deeper version, of course. But that's where I'm at now with the Man in Black stuff. So the girl, Teddy, I guess right after Ed Harris has done or the Man in Black has done monologuing, the girl who brought William through his orientation stabs Teddy. And it turns out she was with Wyatt's crew. So they all start converging on them, on Teddy and the Man in Black. And that's where their scene ends this episode. Still don't know where they're going with this one, but it is part of Dr. Ford's plan, because we're going to jump over to, we get to see one of my favorite characters, Sizemore. He's the creative content editor. And he's in a room working on what he thinks is Wyatt. And it's a guy eating a leg or an arm, I can't remember. And the CEO walks in, and her name is Hale. Her name is Hale. And in the background, you see all the drawings of Wyatt's crew. And you actually do see a picture of a girl, and I think you see a picture of Wyatt. I have to go back. I only watched it twice. I have to go back. But look at the pictures on the wall behind him, and I think that tells you a lot. So she mentions that... they talk about Teresa, and what Dr. Ford had done is set up to Teresa's death to look like she was trying to upload some of the content through that satellite link to whoever. And Dr. Ford is pretending he doesn't know who it is. And it was obviously the board. She was sending stuff out to the board, and the CEO Hale mentions that she fell to her death uploading stuff to the board, and she wants to she wants to recruit Sizemore to do some work. I don't know how anybody can trust this guy. I don't know how anybody can I mean, obviously bringing him on is just setting him up for something. And Dennis and I talked about Sizemore, and he's one of those guys. He's one of those people you bring into your plot and you think you could totally manipulate because he looks like he's the dumbest man in the room, but he's just the guy to fuck up your best plan. You just never want to invite a guy like that. So she recruits him to do something. I don't know if he's Ford's man. It's hard to say. It's hard to say, but that's interesting. I just think anybody going up against Ford at this point, I think you're just dead. I think the guy's, he's said many, many times he's made everything in the park, right down to the crickets. So there's been sorry again, I'm doing this solo. Thanks all for watching, and oh wow, I can't believe some of the people watching. That is very cool. What's up? All these wonderful artists watching. Wow, you guys are awesome. Okay, so we got Sizemore, we got Maeve. So Maeve, we're gonna go jump back to Maeve. And Maeve and our two lovely nerds, Felix and Sylvester, they basically, Sylvester thought he was going to manipulate Felix into Maeve wanted to she needs to get a rebuild because in her C6 vertebrae, there is an explosive if she leaves the park, and she wants to escape, but they need to basically rebuild parts of her to get rid of the fail safes. So they take her in, and Sylvester's idea is just to break her while she's being upgraded. And of course she's going to catch on to that. And she did. And Felix is either in love with Maeve or he is a host too. And one of those disciples that Emo Gonzalez was talking about. And I tend to believe that. So she cuts Sylvester's throat. And just before he dies, they pull out this little, looks like a glue gun and kind of puts his neck back together again, which is pretty awesome. So even from grievous injury, you can come back from that. So look for at least a few crazy resurrections. But Maeve ends up getting pretty close to escaping. She goes, and what's cool, you'll find out, is the hosts can be used for security at any moment. And it's in their programming that if another host goes wild, that the other hosts kind of rein them in. But Maeve was given the ability to control the hosts. So during the gunfight climax timeline, I guess in people's vacations, she uses that to escape, and it was pretty funny. She got the sheriff to just walk away, and then he still gets shot in the back by my favorite character, the girl with the snake tattoo, and gets people to shoot each other. But then she starts to having the memories again about her daughter, and the thing they established earlier on is that when the hosts have memories, it seems perfectly real to them because they remember them perfectly. They're not phasey at all. So it takes them out of time. And when she's leaving the salon, the new Clementine tries to stop her. She cuts her throat, gets a lot of attention. She takes off, goes into her room, and she gets caught. And they do notice that one host is misbehaving. That's what leads me to believe that they know what she's doing. Somebody knows what she's doing and is helping her, be it Arnold or or the board, like I said, or somebody else. It's hard to say. We also find out later in the episode that Bernard did, well, it looks like kill Evie. Before Dr. Ford turns Bernard off. Bernard had finished doing all his work, and now that and I love Ford as a true. He does what every director secretly in Hollywood wishes he could do, and that's kill anybody who gets in your way so you can go on with your narrative, which is hilarious. He's the ultimate artist, really. I'm kidding, by the way. And Bernard asks, before he gets wiped, he's like, hey, have you made me do this before? And Ford, of course, lies to him. And right before he gets wiped, he remembers, you get a memory and you see some boots kind of being lifted off the ground. You see Evie being strangled by Bernard. Which sucks because I really liked Evie. I like the little smart ass techie. And we end. Oh, we end with a couple things. Haley or Hale takes Sizemore down to basically the morgue where all the hosts are shut down, and she decides to pick one so Sizemore can program a fake personality so she can upload the information into the host brain and have him just simply walk out of the park. Like that could happen. And they pick Abernathy, which is the original dad of Dolores. So I don't think that's a mistake. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think Ford is going to I don't know what I think is going to happen. I'm speculating here. I think the board is just going to think they're going to try to outsmart Ford and they're all going to end up dying. Where we go from there, I don't know. But I think, I think stuff is starting to get out of Ford's control. And I think it's Arnold. We also end with Logan returning. We see Dolores and William have a little time together, and she starts flashing back hard. She goes back to and it looks like she goes back to the very beginning with the early hosts, and we see some of our other characters in their very early stages, and something happens. So this must be where the problem happened. I don't know if it was with Arnold or the incident they talked about 35 years ago. But as she's flashing back to William, don't you guys think William is being a little strange about this? I mean, she's one of the hosts talking about, hey, I'm starting to freak out here and malfunction. And he does mention that maybe the further you go out, you start to break. But William started acting a little funny too. So they decide to get the hell out of there, that this whatever place was bad for Dolores, and they run into Logan, who said he's been looking for him for a few days, and he mentions that they're totally fucked. I don't know if it's fucked in a narrative or literally fucked. We'll find out. Emo says Emo says Arnold may have become the ghost in the machine and might already be present in other robots we are seeing now. Agreed. What do you think about this, Emo? I mean, it's not real time travel, but it still seems like they're messing around with time. I don't know if they're. I'm trying to get my head around this scientifically to where you can like back data. You can. Her memories are jobbled. She said Dolores. Her memories were messed up. She said she didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I definitely think they're going to play with this. Dolores could be in a memory with. I think William and Dolores are in the past. I could be wrong about this, but it feels like they're in the past. I still think there's different timelines. Less so than before, like I said, but I still think there's different timelines. Or maybe I'm completely overthinking it, which I have been known to do. But the Ghost in the Machine, absolutely. I mean, I guess the big question is, Emo, was Arnold a real person at one point, and did they like download his consciousness? Because in the scenes for next week, Bernard says, you broke into my brain, and then Ford says, I made your brain. But what if Arnold is real and Ford just tampered with him? I don't know. I mean, that's going full on. Ford has been making a lot of Frankenstein quotes, so I mean, we do have to think about that for Marie Shelley's Frankenstein. Yeah, my mind is, I mean, there's much smarter people watching this movie, and there's much better theories. And if you want to go out and find them, I'll come up with better ones once I've watched it more. But I think that's something really cool. As far as where they're going to go with this, there's only 2 episodes left. So shit is going down. And if they're going to use the Game of Thrones model, everything's going to go down next episode. And the 10th episode will be pretty much set up. And a lot of this is very Game of Thrones, especially down to the music. The guy doing the score is amazing. This is a great freaking soundtrack because it goes everywhere from classical Western to freaking Tron soundtrack. It's great. So with that, it's great. And I'm going to see if I'm missing any more. Did maybe kill Sylvester. Yeah, no, she didn't die. Logan finds William in the timeline. Sorry, I'm going through my notes. This is a good time to have somebody to be talking. I guess that's about it. Unless Emo, what if Ford aged himself? Dennis and I talked about that last episode, that maybe Ford is downloading himself into new bodies, and he's just aging. Maybe these bodies do age if they're not constantly maintained. I think I want to know more about the original indestructible robots, like the little kid. I also want to know, like, how some people can get shot and die. Some hosts can get shot and die, and some hosts don't. Some hosts are like, nope, I'm not dying. So wolf in sheep's clothing to be more trust looking. Yes, absolutely. Maybe Arnold's Ford. Maybe they're the same person. I don't know. It says conversation starter on my Facebook. Yeah, right when it ends. So next week, Emo has agreed to join us. So maybe I'll go down to his house and we'll do it from there. Maybe he'll come up here. Maybe we'll go someplace neutral. Maybe we'll do it over Skype. I'm not sure. I like to do the Facebook Live thing, so we have to, for the time being, we have to be together. I've got some software to do share casting on Facebook Live. It's a little complicated, but that will be happening. Let me do the business here. All of our podcasts and videos are hosted at nerdrotic.com. All of our YouTube videos can be found at youtube.com/user/Sutra Watchtower, the old name of podcast, or you could just go to YouTube and search Nerdrotic channel. Please like us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Nerdrotic podcast. My Twitter is at Nerdrotics. My co-host Twitter, Dennis, is at DaForce. My other co-host, John Reed, is at John Reed 16, and Melissa's is at Agent Bossy Boots. We enjoy hearing from you. We enjoy feedback. And if anybody ever wants to join, just ask. Simply ask. We have our big holiday broadcast coming to you live from San Diego, December 20th. And we have our 3-year anniversary in January. But I can't believe I've been doing this for 3 years. And I can't believe I sold the Comic Outpost 3 years ago. And I did this completely out of mourning for the Comic Outpost. I need to do something nerdy. So Dennis and I started this podcast just for fun, and that's all it is. And we thank everybody for watching. And I will be back next Sunday with Emo Gonzalez, and hopefully Melissa will be with us too. We'll also be back next Sunday with Ash vs. Evil Dead, a great show. If you guys are not watching it, you definitely need to watch it. And during the week, we're going to be doing all kinds of fun Flash and CW stuff. And John and I have a Game of Thrones podcast coming up because there has just been tons of spoilers, and the Blu-ray dropped last week, and there's a bunch of great special features on it. And I just miss Game of Thrones. So everybody, thank you very much for watching. And if you're listening, thank you for listening. And I will see you next time. May the small folks sing songs of your greatness. Good night.